Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the August 4th Post Falls City Council meeting. Clerk will note that all council members are present. Under ceremonies, announcements, appointments, and presentations, first I would like to request council's approval of the appointment of Ross Schlotthauer to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Can we consider that?
Sure.
And any further questions? Shannon, please take the roll.
Thorson,
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Wilhelm,
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Do have a few announcements. Michaela Butler, Post Falls Girl Scout, sold more than 23,000 boxes of cookies this year. To put this in perspective, the national average is 200 boxes per girl, which I think sounds very high. I'm surprised the average is 200. Michaela has rightfully earned her title as one of the top-selling Girl Scouts in the nation. Great job, Michaela, and thank you for all you and the Girl Scouts do for our community in Post Falls. Frozen 2 is playing at Crown Point Park this Friday, August 7th. This is the last movie in the park of the season. We are asking that you pre-register for this event. A link to register on the city's website. And that's to ensure that we can maintain social distancing, etc. And if you have questions or concerns regarding a different public agency this is not the appropriate forum to voice those commands. Specifically, if you have comments regarding the Panhandle Health District and their actions or inactions regarding face coverings, this is not the appropriate forum. Panhandle Health District is a separate, distinct agency over which the city has no authority, and your comments should be addressed to Panhandle Health. So during citizens' comment, we will not hear comments on the masks. And we've asked everybody to wear masks. We've got a few in the audience that are not. I'm personally okay with when I look at how far they're spaced. So I think I can live with that tonight. If we get more and more people, then I would ask everybody to put a mask on. But I think as few as we have tonight, I think we're okay with that. Unless council disagrees. Hopefully that's acceptable.
Good.
Are there any amendments to the agenda tonight?
There are none tonight, sir.
Are there any declarations of conflicts, ex parte contacts, and site visits?
Thank you, Mayor. I will recuse myself from action item number F under the consent calendar, proposal for environmental site assessment at Post Falls Landing. I do have a financial interest in Post Falls Landing as I have it listed for sale. I would also like to disclose that under number C, Master Development Agreement at North Place East Subdivision and Planned Unit Development, Schneidmiller Brothers does own that property. Gary Schneidmiller is my broker. I don't have any financial interest in that subdivision, so I feel I do not have a conflict. Thank you.
I would concur. We okay with that, Warren?
Yeah, I might recommend if we've got a couple of items on there that if you don't mind, maybe not voting on the action, or we can pull those off and have them voted on separately either way.
Okay, I won't vote. Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. Anybody else? With that, would you please present the consent calendar?
Item A, minutes, the July 21st, 2020 City Council meeting. Item B, payables, July 14th through July 27th, 2020. Item C is Master Development Agreement for North Place East Subdivision and Planned Unit Development. Item D is Quiet Ridge Subdivision Construction Improvement Agreement. Item E is Green Meadows East Subdivision Construction Improvement Agreement. And item F, Proposal for Environmental Site Assessment at the Post Falls Landings.
Any questions? Al?
I have a question on item F. I'm not sure who to direct this to, whether to Jason or to Dave. In regards to the Post Falls Landings, it said that this amount of money, $18,000, was going to come out of impact fees, but I don't see that there's a line item under impact fees for the landings. Do we have a budget for that project?
It's the Avista Park project.
A Vista Park project?
Yeah, I'm not sure what title we're calling that right now, so I'll let Dave or Jason.
Jason?
I'm not sure the title, line description that we've given that project.
Well, I don't see anything on here for a Vista.
I'm not sure, Jason, I'm not sure what the exact line is on what we're charging it to. I'd get back to you on that. I know it is coming out of impact fees, though.
Okay. So if there's not a line item there, you'll just let me know where that,
We've put that on there just because we have to identify, well, I like to identify where the funding source is when they put it on the council packet. They just didn't add the line item on there. I know it's going to be impact fees, so when my office pays the bill, I know that's the funding source and not general fund or some other type of funding mechanism.
I just wondered how it was going to impact the budget if we don't have a line item for it.
We do have a line item. It's the same line item that we purchased the property with.
Okay.
So it would be that same line item.
It would be the same
too.
line
So
item.
it's
I don't
all
know
part
the
of that
exact code,
project.
but
If
yeah,
you find it, would you let Al know, please?
I will let him know, yeah.
That work?
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, entertain a motion.
I move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Motion second, further discussion. Roll call, please.
Anthony,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Wilhelm,
Abstain.
Malloy,
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda tonight is public hearings. We do have one, which is the fiscal 2021 budget. With that, I will open the public hearing.
All right, Jason Faulkner, Finance Director. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the first budget hearing for the fiscal year 2021. We've had a few workshops, and I just wanted to do a recap of what we've discussed for this upcoming budget cycle. I also wanted to mention that this budget was built with we have the option of taking 3% property tax increase. This budget was built without taking the 3% property tax increase. There was approximately $500,000 for new construction, about $140,000 for annexation that Post Falls received, and there was also about $100,000 for a urban renewal district that closed. So that was also included in the revenue stream for this budget. On a side-by-side comparison, I'll get into the details of what was going to be asked for or requested in this budget is side-by-side comparison. If you look from this fiscal year 20, which is in the left-hand column, fiscal year 21 in the right-hand column, there's the general fund departments, and there's a dedicated fund, which is the personnel, where we have our medical paid out of, and also a general fund dedicated account, which is the annexation, which is also at that second line down. If you look at the total general fund, it's approximately 1.5 million requested over 21 to fiscal year 20. Special revenue down below is down slightly. That is the 911 fees. What else is in there? I brought them just in case. 911 support, drug seizure, special events. Our insurance is in the special revenue, so that is what is made up of the special revenue funds. Capital projects, that's our impact fees. So if you look at impact fees are up significantly for what we have planned to spend those in fiscal year 21 versus what we had in fiscal year 20. Debt service, we have an LID that's coming due, the last payment of that, so that fund is up. And also in our enterprise funds, we have as everybody's painfully aware of, we have a few large projects at the wastewater treatment plant that are coming up on fiscal year 21. So when you look at a side-by-side comparison, we have a 68 million for budget for fiscal year 20, but we have to budget for all expenditures. So fiscal year 21, we have a $96.9 million budget that we are requesting for fiscal year 21.
Jason, if I could, real
Yes.
quick. That looks like a huge number.
Is a big
Is
number.
it safe to assume that the budget's not going up by the $28 million?
The budget is not. What we have done for the wastewater plant is we have, along the last 7 years that I've been here, we've had wastewater rate increases. So we have money to fund some of these projects that we have going out for. If we don't have, if construction is going quicker than anticipated, we do have a DEQ loan we can draw. But in order to spend the money, we have to budget for it before, whether we use the cash on hand or we use the DEQ loan. But we do have to budget for the expenditures regardless.
Well, that was my point, is if the money's been approved and not spent, then it carries over to the next year, which
Yes.
is the lion's share of that increase.
Right, that's correct, yeah. What I have budgeted for the wastewater treatment plant is about 25 million, yeah. Okay, good question. All right, so I'm going to go through the general fund first. What we have requested for the police is one officer. They also are, since they have expanded the police department, they're also requesting an additional IT person for $79,000. You'll see also on there, they've requested for 6 new police vehicles. This year, they're enabled to purchase 3, so we're requesting that we purchase the 3 from this year to roll over next year. So that's why they have 6.
Again, the expense for the 3 were budgeted for last year, and that's rolled forward.
That rolled forward, yeah. Human resources, that we had a current position in there was a HR assistant. That has been upgraded to a compensation analyst. So instead of outsourcing some of that work, it's going to be done in-house. And the difference between the HR assistant to the upgraded compensation analyst is requested for $35,281. And in streets, there we are proposing converting 6 seasonal positions to 3 full-time employees of a addition of $55,500. Each year we have a budget for vehicle replacement, and this year is no different. The fleet services we have requesting that $243,000 is going to keep the fleet afloat.
Is that not the depreciation?
We know that comes later on. What I have funded for vehicle replacement. These are for brand new vehicles.
Okay.
Also, we're upgrading 2 current position urban forestry. We're going to urban forestry technician, and a planning will be an associate planner. Here's where we get into the depreciation. For capital improvements, what I've done for the last few years is I have set money aside for if we ever need to have a facility replacement. We may not, but just in case, we have some money set aside. What we've started to do also is we're starting to implement a vehicle replacement program, which means if your vehicle is new, you purchase it outright. If it's a replacement vehicle, we will have some funds set aside so that the replacement vehicle will be funded by the time the 5 to 7 year life of the vehicle is done. And so what I've done with that is taken the depreciation of the city vehicles and rolled that to the next year. So last year the depreciation was $275,000. So that's the money I've set aside. I'm proposing to set aside. We've done that the last few years. Highway 41, we have the ITD is doing some upgrades along Highway 41. The city wants to do some additional outside of the scope of their work, so that they will need impact fees, whatever they won't pay. The general fund I'm proposing is picking up the difference of the $375,000. We also have medical that's increasing to $260,000 over last year. And I have also for full-time employees, a COLA merit of $700,000.
And again, the merit is being held, so.
Yes. We have devised a plan of waiting for, we're not really sure what the revenues are going to look like, the state shared revenues, sales tax, liquor tax, ones that the city relies on for that. So we plan on, after the first of the year, looking to see where the revenues are at, and then we'll discuss as department heads where we go forward with the merit for employees. Yes, sir.
Would that merit be retroactive then back to October 1st, or would it just be January?
I believe it would just be like if we revisit it in January, it'd be effective in January.
January, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
There.
thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. So that is the general fund recommendations. Now I want to get into hit the highlights of the reclaimed water. We talked about at the very beginning, if I look fund by fund, the wastewater treatment plant, there's a project we have budgeted for. So there's a budget for $25 million. for the wastewater treatment plant, the tertiary treatment project. Outfall replacements, $500,000. We are proposing to have a few lift stations, Ponderosa lift station of $1.7 million, 12th Avenue lift station of $500,000, and collection for $350,000. Decommission of Prairie Falls, that's gonna be $400,000. Another the Shore Pines lift station of $250,000, and also purchase of a forklift of $55,000. I continue on for the reclaimed water. There's 2 trucks for about $100,000 for a total. A trailer for $40,000. Master plan for the wastewater $80,000. Revisit the collection system portion of the rate study for additional $20,000, and purchase of a storage shed for $35,000. We've had I've had some questions on whether reclaimed water is tax-based. It's not, it's user fee based, so all the users that they get a utility bill that pays for wastewater, that's what funds wastewater, and also water. Taxes do not support the utility funds. Okay. And in the water department, they have a proposal for this for fiscal year 21, a truck replacement, $110,000. Well, let's see what's another big item. They're having a well flow meter replacement of $15,000, covered storage for $35,000, and also a potable water line locator of $5,000. Those are the big items we have proposed for this year's upcoming budget, and some of the positions. So the next step is on the 18th to bring back the ordinance for the council. Also the 18th, this year we have a new requirement for, in prior years, the foregone that we didn't take just rolled over, the 3% rolled over to foregone. That'll be also the same council that I have to do, the council meeting where I have to do a resolution to identify the amount of foregone and to accept it in the amount of the 3% to roll it over to the foregone. They kind of changed the rules. Before, if we wanted to use foregone, we have to do a resolution. This time, in order to have the 3% we didn't take to roll over foregone, we have to do a resolution. So it just makes it more visible that either you take it, or when you roll it over, that the citizens know how much it is. So, and that's going to be approximately $360,000 for the 3%.
Jason, I got a question again on that, the impact fees for the parks.
Yes.
I noticed that the rollover going for this year was going to be $2.6 million.
Okay.
And then the rollover for the next year would be like $1.6 million, which means that we're going to spend down our savings in park impact fees by about $1 million. Does that sound right?
Well, what I have for the parks impact, I believe that email that I had sent out was the carryover was $2.8 million. So what I have is, what I do is I look at the available cash balance. So whatever the cash balance is in there from prior years that went unspent, I rebudget that.
Okay.
So we have the money set aside, so when a project is identified, the contract comes back to council for approval, but I don't need to amend the budget and have the appropriation redone. So we have it budget-wise, we have the authority to spend it. The contract comes back to be spent.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I guess what I'm concerned with is if I'm just looking at that because we have a large request coming up later, that it seems like our impact fee fund balance is going down.
And that's what they have, well, if you look back prior years, it had built up. And we had to get some money on hand in order to complete the project. So now, once they got the projects, the impact fees are going down. The balance is going down. We are in the process of updating the impact fees, and so the parks impact fees, if I'm not mistaken, are going to be a little higher than what they currently are now. So when new development comes in, we'll be receiving that money to build it back up for whatever is planned to be built out on the parks impact fee plan.
Okay, but we haven't approved that.
Have not the new study that's going to be available probably in October.
Yeah, okay.
I'll be back with that too.
I'm just kind of concerned, and we'll talk about it later when that item comes up, that we're
And that's what I had hoped
Savings.
that the impact fees, that's why I haven't seen the master fee resolution yet, is because I was hoping that by the time the fee resolution came through, the impact fee study would be done and I could do it all at once. But it's not gonna be done by the end of the fiscal year, so next council meeting, I have 3 public hearings, and one of them is for the master fee resolution, so.
Thank you.
And then a few months later, be back for the updated impact fees.
Any other questions of Jason? No, thank you.
Thank you.
Shannon, anyone wishing to speak?
We have none.
With that, I will close the public hearing. We're talking a lot of money, obviously, and I think it's important to note that on some of those funds, it's a carryover and not an actual increase of what we're going to spend. And I find it interesting that I think when the article was written on the budget, Jason was quoted as saying, we have no intention of taking an increase, and yet there was a letter the following day or the next day complaining that the City of Post Falls was taking a budget increase. And so I just want to assure everybody that we are not taking a budget increase for, I don't know, we've been 10 years or so other
Well,
than this
yeah, this will be the 12th year.
12th year other than the streetlight situation. So I
Correct.
think staff's done a pretty good job of bringing that forward for us. So I want to thank Jason and all department heads for assisting us in that regard. Any other council comments or discussion?
No, I'd just like to thank Jason. I know some of our budget workshops were held through Zoom, and I'd like to thank the staff for getting the materials to us, because it was difficult at that time to ask you questions, respond, but any question we had, you did get back to us. And I think doing those workshops, you did an excellent job considering the circumstances on the budget. So I'd like to thank Jason and the staff. So.
I also appreciate council, and I know Al in particular have had questions, and I appreciate you guys taking the time to ask those questions and meet with staff and get them answered. I think that's very helpful. So we do not need an action tonight, correct?
I say in the past, typically you've made a motion to bring forward the ordinance at the next meeting.
Yep, that works.
So moved?
Second.
Motion second, further discussion. Roll call, please.
Wolf,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Wilhelm,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next up on the agenda is unfinished business, returning ordinances and resolutions, and we have a resolution and cooperative agreement.
I would move to approve the resolution and cooperative agreement with the Idaho Transportation Department for the Highway 41 Union Pacific Railroad closure.
Second.
Motion second, further discussion.
Okay, I'm going to sound like a squeaky wheel on this, because this is what I was talking about a minute ago. I know that we talked about buying this railroad spur. It's like $365,000. The money's going to come from impact fees, park impact fees. And I just keep seeing that budget line item keep going down and down and down. And then just so happened today we get the park master plan that calls for spending $33 million over the next 10 years. And on a good year, we make about $1 million in impact fees. So my concern is we've got $33 million worth of projects kind of on the line coming in the next 10 years, and our savings is going down, and we're only going to take in about $1 million a year in impact fees. So how we're going to fund $33 million worth of projects over the next 10 years, I'm a little confused about that, which then I come back to this and I go, well, I don't think we can afford it. Quite frankly, I don't think we can afford that to buy that railroad spur. I'd love to have it, but the way the money's going out and it's just not, it's going out faster than it's coming in. So I would not be in favor of moving forward with this.
Is Bill, and yeah, I'd like to ask a question of Bill, because you did the proposal. Thanks, Bill. I know it is a large amount. Are we planning on applying for any Rails to Trails grants or for any funding through the Idaho Recreational Trails Program to help fund some of these projects? Because I know the grant cycle comes up in October
Right.
to January, so are we aggressively pursuing any of these grants to help fund some of these projects to?
We
Save
haven't
some
yet.
extra.
Once we have acquisition of the property is when we would work with Parks directly and
Okay.
start pursuing some of those
Because
grants.
we have that window from October to January to get that submitted, and so,
Yeah.
so it looks like we'd
I
have the
would-
property by then.
Would sit down with Robbie and Dave and have those discussions on that directly. Once we've acquired and have acquisition of the property, would be appropriate time to apply. Then we would know that we could expend those dollars and show that we just had acquired it as well, so.
Because we can use the impact fees as matching funds, can't we, Dave, on that? So, okay, I guess the other question too, is there any negotiations going on with the county to finish their portion then from Hutter to Meyer Road?
That I
Yes.
am not familiar with. Maybe
Is that
Dave
what,
or Dave or
we'd still
Robbie
have that
could.
gap in there, so,
Yeah, so I'm not sure where they're at on that status. We'll check with them and
okay.
go ahead and get back to you on that, Steve.
Because that would be my only concern, we'd have the nice trail to Meyer.
Right.
Then you'd have nothing, then you'd have the nice trail at Hutter. So we somehow have to get the county moving a little bit to finish that portion between those two to have the complete trail.
Okay, somebody will check with the county
Okay.
on that status and get back to you.
Has the county purchased theirs at this point, their piece of it?
I am not sure of the status of that. I've been predominantly focused on this. I'm not sure if Dave.
Warren, you want to?
So my understanding is this is step one of a multiple step process. So we're acquiring this piece. ITD acquired the piece where it crosses 41. The highway district is acquiring from where ours ends out to Prairie Avenue. That just gets the property acquired. It gets the ability to move forward with the Highway 41 project. That is not funding the development of the trail. That will come later down the road. And that's where you may be looking for some land and water conservation funding or some other funding that we would pursue.
Okay.
Well, we will have discussions with the county on the status of
Yeah.
of where they are with that.
It'd be nice if
Back to you.
we could coordinate them all together so there'd be one trail through, so.
Yeah, maybe even look at a joint grant application or something might be nice as well, so,
Okay, thank you.
yes.
Any other questions? We had a motion and a second, correct? Roll call, please.
Borders,
Aye.
Wilhelm,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Wolf,
Nay.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next up is the Tullamore Sports Complex Master Plan adoption.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, Robbie Quinn, Parks Planner, and I'm pleased to present Mike Terrell with Michael Terrell Landscape Architecture, who the city has contracted with for the design of the Tullamore Sports Complex Master Plan. And we are here seeking your adoption of the master plan concept and your approval to move forward on the next phase, which would be construction documents. And without getting too much into it, I will turn it over to Mike and be available to answer questions after.
Thanks, Robbie. Mayor, members of the council, I'm Mike Terrell, the landscape architect leading the team on the Tullamore Sports Complex. We've been working since before the first of the year on master planning the process. And so one of the, I guess I can take this down.
Yeah.
And so I felt like I was only hearing myself. So what I'm here tonight to do is to go through the process that we went through to come up with the master plan, the scope of the master plan, looking ahead as to where the project is going, and give you some background very quickly, and then answer any questions that you might have regarding the plan itself. We really greatly appreciate the input of all the citizens that participated in 2 surveys during the master planning process. We sat down with various stakeholders representing baseball and softball and various other user groups as well. The design team included my office, geoengineers out of Coeur d'Alene, All West Testing is geotechnical engineers, KWR electrical engineers, and H2A architects. The project scope, the site is a old former gravel pit up on Prairie Avenue, 25.9 acres. There'll be frontage for improvements required for Prairie Avenue and Cecil on the west. Right now, we're looking at the master plan includes, as we went through the process, we tried to figure out how to get 5 baseball fields, 4 soccer fields, various other amenities located on this site for a youth tournament, sports complex, and multi-use facility. The existing site, challenging site. It was a great gravel pit. There's a lot of interesting things going on. There's about 40 feet of elevation change from Prairie Avenue to the bottom of the pit. When we went through the geotechnical investigation, we found that there was a lot of things buried in the pit. We only drilled 6 holes, and each hole had something different in it. And so one of the things we did is we looked at that geotechnical report and then kind of looked at the master planning process and how we could evaluate that as well. Process to date, as far as outreach to the community, we had a survey with 254 responses early in March. We had stakeholder interviews, an open house before we could not have open houses anymore, and then meetings with city staff and the park staff and maintenance staff and Ross Point Water District to look at, because they'll be the water purveyor. A lot of Zoom meetings with staff. Then, like I said, geotechnical engineering report, traffic impact study, so we could properly evaluate what the cost would be associated with the project. And then a community master plan survey that rolled out the master plan to get responses again in March with 255 responses. Like I said, geotechnical report, we found a whole bunch of stuff. We're going to have to mitigate it. We rolled that into the master plan cost estimate. Up to 30 feet deep, there's concrete and topsoil and other things associated in there. So we've got a reasonable handle on what we have to deal with. Traffic impact study included traffic counts. We initially were going to do the traffic counts in February. In March, we found that wasn't probably a good time to do it since the traffic was really low. So we held off on the traffic impact study a little later, and we evaluated. The evaluation of the study was what we knew already. We were going to have to do improvements on Prairie and on Cecil, at least the half-street improvements on the park side. The survey for the preferred master plan, I'm just going to go through it really quickly. Question number 1. Really, we found out with question number 1 what the folks responding to the survey, what they represented, who they were, what in their family, youth baseball down to youth flag football and soccer. I'll kind of hit the high points in the survey. What sports should be accommodated? The top 10 included youth baseball with 75%, youth soccer at 65%, girls softball at 58%, youth flag football at 46%, youth tackle football at 38%. And so we took all this as we went through the master planning process, and some of the things we read out of this is we need to try and create a facility that can help as many children and community members play sports as possible. The third question was, in budget prioritization, what's the most important? So if we're today, we only have so many dollars, what will we spend it on? It was all over the board. So you can see only 9% responses on multi-use fields, and then it's scattered over a lot of other areas. Neighborhood playground was important because we got feedback from the neighborhood, then ball field lighting, shelters, and event plaza for the amenities. There's a whole lot of responses. There's probably 180 different individual responses. It's available in the back of the master plan, the appendix. What we did is we took every response we got, we put it in as an appendices so you can read it and take a look. There's all, like I said, all over the board. So word clouds really we take all the words from the comments and say, how many times did we see this word? And parking was number 1, fields was number 2, and then it goes on from there. And that's typical of what you see in a lot of complexes, is parking and access are very important. So the master plan itself has 6 different chapters, has an introduction, inventory analysis looking at the site, public engagement, so we talk about all the public engagement that we did. The master plan itself goes into detail, and I'm going to cover that in some detail tonight. The cost estimate and the phasing component, and then cost recovery analysis. And then, like I said, there are appendices that include the whole geotechnical report all the way to the survey answers and a programming matrix that gives the detail on what we have in the master plan. So it's the overall master plan, and so what we have is Prairie Avenue is on the north, Cecil is on the west, and then Kildare is on the south, and Charleville is on the east. And so that gives you kind of a sense. The Ross Point Water District is in the northeast corner, along with a future site for a fire station. So it gives you kind of an idea. The project is surrounded by development on 2 sides right now. There's a project in the works for residential development on the west as part of, they would be responsible for their half of the Cecil improvements. The master plan itself includes 5 combo baseball, softball fields, youth fields with 225-foot outfields, a center all-inclusive, a field which can be used for warm-ups as well, maintenance facility, 4 soccer fields, parking for 228 cars, and then basketball courts, playground areas, and a skate dock. Gives you an idea what it looks like right now. Again, in the foreground is Kildare, and then the future and Prairie running from the lower right to the upper left. The baseball fields itself, as we went through the process, we evaluated, based on the input we received from a lot of different sources and stakeholders, that for a tournament complex, having synthetic turf infields, you can turn the fields over quicker, you reduce your maintenance to manage tournaments, and you can really attract a lot more tournaments because of the interest in playing on synthetic turf. And so all 5 fields are slated and estimated with synthetic turf infields and natural turf outfields. The outfields are 225 feet, which could accommodate both softball and youth baseball. We have base provisions for 60 and 70-foot bases, so we have a lot of flexibility in who we can put on these fields. The all-inclusive field is in the middle. Just to the south of that, the all-inclusive field is the concession restroom building, which has significant restrooms, and a concession building to really give that full experience of going to a tournament, that you can really appreciate the tournament and the atmosphere. Concrete bleachers with shade structures, dugouts, batting cages, warm-up areas, all of the types of things that you need to bring a bunch of players in and have a great weekend. In addition to having a great weekend, can be utilized for practices during the week as well. And that's the other thing about having synthetic turf infields, is that you can put a lot more people on it, a lot more time, earlier in the season, later in the season, regardless of the weather. So one of the things we looked at is what's it going to look like from Prairie. And so, like I said, there's a 40-foot drop, so it's going to sit below Prairie. So a lot of the noise from Prairie is going to go over the top of it. So it's going to create an interesting atmosphere. And this is a view from that corner. And if you look really closely, there's a flag just above the bicyclist's head, which is in the center of the complex. So it's a little hard to see in this. One of the other components that we thought was really important is create that great first impression for people coming to the complex. Have an event plaza where you can have food trucks, so you come in, it's a ceremonial entrance into the complex. They can get food, they can really enjoy the whole complex, including the playground areas and the fields. And then off in this picture off to the left is a shelter concession restroom area, and the soccer fields are to the left of that. This would be the entrance, the ceremonial complex entrance, so it gives the excitement. You're going to a tournament. This is a big deal for a lot of people. They invest a lot of time coming to events. And so what we want to do is create that experience so people come back in the future, so that you program these in so it becomes a yearly event for folks and for teams and their players to come back to the Tullamore Sports Complex. Gives you a little idea what the concession restroom building might look like. In the middle, we have an area for shade. We have a place for folks to pick up things to eat and to drink, and then bleachers to sit in, and screens, and like I said, the synthetic turf infields. One of the things that we found early on is that once we located the 5 fields, that we have plenty of room to get the 5 fields in with 225-foot outfields. We have a great opportunity to create a large grass area in the south, and we can fit 4 full-size soccer fields that could play all the way to collegiate soccer on. One of the things that's great about this site, one of the great things that we can do with this site, aside from the challenges that we have subsurface, is that this whole area to the south, we can grade it so it is flat. So, well, flat with drainage, so you can maneuver the fields in any direction you want. So there isn't a tier between fields, there isn't a berm between them. You can change the field configuration so that you can spread the wear out, so you can extend the season, get a lot more use out of it. We have shelters in this area. Again, the restroom, shelter building up there in the upper middle section, the food court plaza, and then a playground and shelter. And so it's set up so that the 5-plex for the baseball fields can be fenced off and the gates can be locked. And so this whole rest of can be a neighborhood park or utilized when there are not events or games or tournaments going on. Southwest parking lot. So one of the challenges, and I'll be up front, we've had comments about access to the parking lot from Killdeer for this parking lot in the southwest corner. And so one of the challenges we have is off of the Cecil on the west, we have it's a steep drop from Cecil down into the complex. And so accessing, getting a road off of Cecil is a real challenge, and we brought a single road in and extended the parking lot so it gets dual use. One, it serves a maintenance facility that's kind of deep back and hidden inside, minimal amount of cars that are visible to the neighbors to the south. But the main parking lot is off of Charleville on the east. So the maintenance building and yard is located in kind of the center on the left of the picture. We've got a placeholder for batting cages for rent that could be used at different times of the year, 3 basketball courts and a skate dot, as I noted. And we've had a lot of different conversations on what other things could maybe go in terms of basketball courts and skate dots. And so those are opportunity spots for that we felt during the process we got feedback that those were important.
I have to ask, what is a skate dot?
Skate dot is not a full-size skate park with bowls and everything. It's a flat concrete area with the elements built on it, so there's a lot of flexibility. So you can get a lot of skate value out of it without spending a lot of money.
I'm sure everyone else knew, but I didn't. So.
Well, I should have, we get kind of caught up in our jargon sometimes. So I'm going to go quickly through the buildings. We think we've done a really good job of creating really flexible, dynamic buildings that are inexpensive to build, but also have a lot of value. So the orange in the center of the building is the concession area. There's a men's and women's restroom just to the right of that that can be closed off. And then there are 2 unisex restrooms that can be open when the demand is lower. So one of the things we worked with staff on is trying to identify ways that we can say, okay, we're only going to maintain these 2 unisex or 1 unisex restroom during the week when we just don't have that much demand. The other restroom shelter out by the soccer field has a small office space, again, 2 unisex restrooms and larger men's, women's restrooms and outdoor drinking fountains and a shelter shade structure so that folks can get out of the sun. Maintenance building. a large maintenance building to serve this section of town, not only this complex, but maybe some other areas as well. So that brings me to the master plan estimate. And what we've covered is that this is the full build out. And so the high points in this are 5 fields with synthetic turf infields, 4 soccer fields, full-size soccer fields, the parking lot construction and playground construction, batting cages, hardscape, all that. Ross Point Water District fees to hook into their system, which is very significant amount of money. It's about $250,000 to hook into their system for their capitalization fees, because it's based on a per acre basis of turf. And then earthwork site utilities, and then the Cecil and Prairie half street improvements. So the requirements of the complex to build their portion, the city's portion of those streets, are run right about $1 million, including A&E fees as well. So the preliminary estimate includes a 20% contingency, just because we don't know what we don't know right now, because this is a master plan. We haven't done detailed design yet. But it includes the offsite improvements, is about $14.4 million. So having said that, we said, worked with staff and said, well, what if we had a phase 1, and what would a phase 1 look like? And in terms of, can we get a facility that we could have tournaments on and support it and do the things that we have to do to build it? So we have to we have to connect to the Ross Point Water District. We have to build the half street improvements. So those are all fixed costs going into whatever we do. So what we're getting is, and I'll go to I've got a phase 1 graphic. So our phase 1, looking including contingency, and this gets 3 baseball fields and grading for the whole site and doing the street frontage improvements as well, for about $7.3 million. So that's what a phase 1 improvement would look like. We would grade the whole site. We would prepare do the subsurface work to get it ready to go, and then we would have 3 fields with a parking lot with about 100 spaces so that you could have tournaments on this, and it would look like it belongs there. It's got a lot of extra space around it, but we felt like this was a way that you could phase, one potential approach to phasing the project in, to get a project that would get people excited and get folks to the complex. So one of the things we were asked when we started this project is to look at cost recovery. And so did quite a bit of research in terms of the 2 sides of the cost recovery equation. One is the revenue side, the other is the expense side. On the revenue side, we looked at how many tournaments we thought we could bring in, what the rental costs for the fields would be, and the utilization rates from January all the way through December. And then we looked at having all 5 fields play baseball and softball with synthetic turf infields. The city would manage the offerings manage the whole complex, getting people in and maximize the use of the facility. And so we we started out with, say, 12 baseball, softball tournaments a year with 15 teams per tournament. And then 11 soccer tournaments with 12 teams per tournament. So that's how we approached that. And then the utilization, I've got a spreadsheet that shows kind of how many days and how many periods per day during the month, and we can get into that in more detail if you have additional questions. But so projected revenue, and you'll notice that baseball is significantly less than soccer. And one of the differences that you can play a lot more soccer on those fields and turn them over a lot more than the baseball. And so the revenue for the baseball is a little bit lower, and the soccer season is a little bit longer. Soccer players are more excited to get out earlier in the season, play a little bit later in the season as well. So tournaments and camps, we included those, and then we included a line item for sponsorship and naming. And one of the things that we found in our research is that there's some opportunities for sponsorship and naming. I'll just give one example. The ice ribbon in downtown Spokane They signed a contract for $90,000 a year for naming rights for the ice ribbon. So that is a facility that's really, unfortunately, it's not being used much this year, but it's really a wintertime only, doesn't have the number of folks traveling through it as this facility would have. So there is an opportunity for sponsorship and naming that can be taken advantage by the city. So we have a line item for $25,000. So a revenue of about $357,000, $358,000. So our projected expenses, so I looked at the expenses in two different ways. One, I looked at some comparable facilities and looked at the expenses there. And then we spent a lot of time with staff saying, okay, what do you think it would really take to maintain this facility? And this is the full build out. This is the 5 fields, 5 baseball, softball fields, and 4 soccer fields. And we came up with, working with staff, we came up with it would cost about $424,000 to operate the complex. And that includes water, lights, all in. And so at the end, there's it would be additional cost, about $66,000 a year net loss, recovering about 84% of expenses. So give you kind of an idea, and I'm sure many of you have seen this already, a typical park system can usually get about 30% back. A typical sports complex is about 60 to 70%. And so we've looked at this, we had this conversation with staff, and we massaged in the opposite direction the revenue. We took the revenue down saying that we need to get to something that we think is achievable, and this is probably not a first year, this is maybe third year once you get going, and then what the expenses actually were. And so this is what we came up with. So with that, ending with the numbers, I'll open myself to any questions that you might have.
Questions?
Yes.
First of all, I'd like to compliment you on the plan, but when I'm looking through it and I'm looking at the revenue,
Right.
I think we've just from my experience, in the amount of competition for areas running tournaments between Coeur d'Alene, Spokane, Sandpoint, Restroom, I think we've overestimated a little bit. If that's total build out, but what is the revenue expectation for phase 1?
So we didn't run a revenue expectation for phase 1, but we could certainly do that.
Yeah, because like I said, I think it's a good plan, but I think we're a little heavy on the revenue there. That's just my feeling.
And we could certainly go into the details, show you how we came up with it, because we actually have many months where we don't have any revenue, and then but during the major summer months, June, July, August, we have a tournament every weekend, but we aren't doubling up on soccer and baseball. So there's a baseball tournament on one weekend, soccer tournament on another weekend, then maybe softball. So we're using all those weekends, but we're not doubling up, which potentially you could do, but we don't really have the parking and the staffing to maintain that. So yeah, I think there's an opportunity to really dive into the revenue some more and see where it's at, and see whether we can recover as much as possible. But I think that's definitely something to continue to look at.
Okay, one other question too.
Sure.
Is Post Falls Little League going to be a partner in this and for help with donations or renting the fields, or have they been kind of a partner in this, since there are the 3 Little League fields there?
So we have talked, they were some of the first groups we talked with in terms of figuring out what the programming is and what the size of the fields were. And so, yes, I would anticipate that going forward that those conversations would continue on.
Okay. And I'll get back to the revenue. I think the baseball, soccer tournaments, I think are a little high. I think the sponsorships and naming's a little bit low. I think that could come in a little bit higher on
Yeah.
that. So that's my questions.
Linda?
I'd just like to say thank you. I think that we've been talking about this for about 12 years, Dave, I think around 12 years, and did the land swap and, all of that along the way. I think the plan is really very good. So I just thank you, applaud your efforts.
Thank you.
All right,
Nice presentation.
thank you very much.
Al, I think you do have a question. Is it for Dave, for Robbie? Who's it for?
Whoever can tell me how we're gonna pay for it.
Lots of bake sales.
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to see this, but I just don't see where the money is.
And over how many years is the build-out?
Yeah, I mean, we're not gonna see any revenue until it's built out. I mean, and then, even then, it's a loss every year. That's why I was talking about it earlier. I mean, I spent all day looking at this stuff, trying to figure out how we're gonna pay for this, because we're only gonna get, in a good year like we're having right now with the impacts that we're having with all the building, maybe get $1 million. And we don't have any money in the bank other than maybe about $1 million. We just spent 360 of that. I'd love to see it, but I just don't know where the money's gonna come from.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor, Council. I'm going to take a step back so I can answer a couple questions in there. As far as revenue on that, it probably is, in my mind, I would agree, a little bit high to start. Build out can be done. It really depends upon the staff member we have running it. Sports are unique. You have to really work and hustle and cater to that. Steve and I had talked about Coeur d'Alene has dropped a little bit. It's because this is suck up time, but their former director used to cater to them heavily. And that's what it takes. We concentrated on the soccer tournaments as we looked at trying to get that revenue. They bring in better rate of return. As far as Little League, they're interested in it. They want space. The hard numbers come in what we're going to charge them for renting. We subsidize them today. And that really will come down to a Park and Rec Commission talking about where that comfort is and then bringing it on to you folks to go up. Timing of this, or how we will afford it. First of all, this is simply the master plan that we're asking for approval. We're not going to go out and build it tomorrow. Matter of fact, the next step would be coming back and doing the construction designs and tightening it down. We're not looking at doing that until 2021. From there, we're probably doing construction if we get our land and water grants, as we build up some impact fees again, we're looking at 2023 to 2024 for construction of the first phase. This will be completed long after I'm retired. But it doesn't do us any good to just design one field where the days of us going forward and not coming up with full designs, we can't do that anymore. As far as the cost, yes, it's expensive. Trust me, I've been sweating for the last few years about every project we do because construction costs continue to go up and up. I don't have control over that. We can cut things out, we can eliminate, but we do have to meet code. We have to meet ADA requirements. I have to get enough engineering done, enough design work done so I can go get building permits, just like any other developer. And that's what we're doing slowly but surely. We have to have some of that stuff in place so we can go after the grants. It's land and water grants. It's the, rails to trails, but there's parking lot grants.
So Dave, kind of follow up if
Yes.
I can on Al's question. So we don't have the money today.
No,
And we're not going to have the money next week, next year. How long does a master plan like this, if we get a master plan, will it, you don't want it to just sit on the shelf forever, but if we say it's going to take us 8 to 10 years to come up with the cash for it, is that plan still going to be relevant?
I believe so. Will we have to make a few changes in there based on changes of code? Yes. ADA may change. We may have to adjust a restroom or two. One of the things we want to do this next year is get a mass grading plan. That's not a detailed thing. And we can, once we have that, I can go back to Copper Basin per our agreement. They will do all the rough grading. That's part of that 14 million. That saves $750,000, about that. So those are some things we will do. We'll have to still do some finished grading.
Okay.
Like to get a parking lot in soon, but
Just Mr. Steve.
So I guess I'm still got that same question. We've got $2 million that we're going to spend this year. $1 million of that is coming out of the savings account. And I can't envision how we're going to build up a impact fee bucket of money to pay for this when we're actually going the other direction. We're spending now more than we're bringing in. We're bringing in $1 million. We spend $2 million this year. That's $1 million that comes out of savings. We just spent another $365 earlier tonight. I just don't see where the plan is that we're going to gain any traction at any point in time to, even on a really good year, we make $1 million. That means if we didn't do any other projects, it'd take 14 years before we.
The last 2 to 3 years, we've been bringing in about, and Jason, please correct me, but about $1.5 million. With the impact fee study that's being done, there's recommendations to bring the numbers up to a level that would increase it to probably, let's say, we hit $2 million. Okay. We have to spend impact fee money. We can't just hold it forever. We do have a timeline in there. We have to roll it, and that's what we do. So we do little pieces here and here. The reality is, other than picking up a few capacity items for the next several years, 90% of our impact fee money is going to go towards Black Bay Park and this project.
We're not going to build, what about the landings?
We have right now set aside, or in the upcoming budget, $250,000. Pardon? For the landings? $250,000. The rest of that should be on Avista. They're on the hook for $2.3 to $2.8 million to build it.
Al, I think your question, I appreciate where you're coming from.
Yeah.
I think tonight, if we adopt the master plan.
Yeah, I guess that's the hard part, though, is we adopt the master plan, and then it's kind of like green light to go out and spend this money that.
Yeah, they got to come back to us for that.
Well, I know, but they do. They come back, and then it's like, well, we've done this, so now let's go do this, and next thing you know, we're committed to something that I don't think we should commit to.
I guess my thought is if the money isn't there, then it's pretty easy to say no.
Okay.
Steve, let's go to Linda first, Steve.
Go ahead, Linda.
Well, I just, Al, we authorized them to go and make this, they didn't just think this up and bring it to us. We've seen it before, and yeah, we have.
I haven't seen $14 million before.
No. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
But we authorized them to go out and do this sports complex, right? There was
The master plan.
the master plan.
Okay.
Yeah. So I guess what I'm wondering is why would we do that if the result was going to be not to go forward? I'm not understanding, because we've, over the years, year in and year out, from my perspective, we've got the impact fees coming in for a long period of time, and a lot of those projects have been large, and then we use a large amount of money. That's how we've been doing it. I don't understand.
Well, I don't either.
Well, I know.
I guess we asked him to do a master plan so we could find out, well, how much is this thing going to cost us? So now we found out how much it's going to cost us. I just, that's why I spent all day going, how are we going to now pay for it with the revenue stream that we have over the past however many years? How are we going to pay for it?
And so do you feel that the solution to that is just to deny this and have them do something else, or just deny it altogether?
I would just say that we don't want to move forward. We can accept the master plan, but, again, it's going to be a year-to-year thing as far as, I just don't want to see us go out and spend another $200,000 to go do this, and then, I just don't see where the money's going to come from or we're ever going to get it done. So then we spend $200,000 for, moving some dirt around, and we're sitting here again next year going, we don't have money to do the next phase or the next phase. And we, you know, again, if we're going to see the overall Park and Rec master plan, it calls for $33 million.
I know.
And we're getting about $1 million a year.
I know. So, and is this okay that we have this? Okay. So, we had the Black Bay plan come forward to the tune of 20-some million dollars. And, okay.
Yeah.
And so, I don't recall this conversation taking place. Where are we gonna get the money? I guess I'm just, if we don't have a plan,
So what's the solution? Just to say,
Well-
yes, move forward and then run out of money?
no, but they already did the plan.
Okay.
So I guess I just don't understand what you want them to do with the plan.
At this stage of the game, tell me how they're going to pay for it. I still haven't heard that.
Okay. And I guess the best I can tell you is, do I have that amount of money sitting in a pot? No. And if we set aside that much money, there's always a concern, well, why are you putting so much money and holding it? So we have brought programs together. I'm saying that we will have to break it down into manageable pieces, and we're going to have to find multiple funding sources for it to move forward. But we can't do that without a plan. I can't go out and get a grant without having a plan.
I understand that too, Dave, but we've got Black Bay Park. We haven't got any grants for that. I mean, we don't have a history of going out and getting millions of dollars in grant.
We have,
And I don't know, I'd ask Steve, since he's been in the business, I mean, is there millions of dollars available out there when we're talking about grants? Or are we talking about maybe $100,000?
Now, I can answer that. For the first time in probably 15 years, both houses of Congress passed the Land and Water Conservation Bill, I think just yesterday, 100%.
Okay.
And so basically, the state's been working on cut funds, so I don't know, but there's going to be more funds than that than there's been in the last 10 years for applying for grants. So basically, we have to be aggressive. The funds can be there through the grant process now, through the state of
much?
Idaho. Well, you're not going to get a $14 million grant, but you can get sizable up to $2 million, $3 million. And the other thing is, you have to have a master plan adopted by a city council before you can even apply for the grant. If you can't, Dave can't even apply for the grant if the council hasn't approved the plan and adopted, because it shows there's no support for this park from the council. So we have to show the state that we as a body will support this park or work as hard as we can to make it feasible. But if we don't adopt a plan, the state won't even look at the grant.
Linda.
So-
And so is that your plan, Dave, is to aggressively go after these grants? Do you personally do that? Who actually does that?
I have been writing the grants for the city, and yes, I've gotten quite a few. Our Chase Field was built with it. We've utilized it on Paulides Park. We've utilized it on, White Pine Park, Sportsman Park, those were Land and Water. But it's not just that, but the president did sign the bill today. That funding not only funded it 100%, but doubled the amount that's going to the states. The other thing that happened is there used to be a clause in there that your Gulf states and California and the water states, they got a bigger share. That's been eliminated, so Idaho's going to see a larger amount. Is it millions? No. But in the past, if we got 500,000, we were doing pretty good. Last indication I've had from state parks was you could look at some projects up between that $750,000 and $1 million would be considered. But we're going to have to do that. We're going to have to look at naming rights, and we have to make a choice. Do we want that to go to ongoing, or do we want it to go towards development? We will go after grants that are small, that maybe pay for the trees, or they might pay for something with the ADA. We're going to be looking at every way we can to make it work.
Thanks, Dave. Gary.
I can't say I have all the money. I don't. We can only build what we can afford, which is what we've always done.
I'm not asking for a pot of money, I'm asking for a plan. That's all.
Carrie?
Well, we have three things. To me, the Black Bay project is somewhat overwhelming. So what I'm wondering, do we have so you have the landing too, which would be just a wonderful, used by many, many people in the community. Do we have are these prioritized at all? Have we prioritized them? Because this is a lot of, between Black Bay and this project, my prioritizing would place the sports complex number 1, the landings, and Black Bay number 3 in all of that, as far as how many people in the community are going to utilize. And so that's the only thing I don't know. I don't know what our priority is. I don't know that you have the resources and the staff to be writing grants for everything. You know, Black Bay is a huge project, dollar-wise, land-wise, every-wise. I just don't know that that would be the same kind of priority that a sports complex would be. So I know that we don't have to pick and choose, but, you know, Alan wants a plan for how to pay for them. I want to know where the priority is on these.
The priority at this point is looking at, with Black Bay, is to take care of the erosion, because that's an immediate issue for the city, and that would include part of that boardwalk. Beyond that is pulling back. We've asked them to design some of those items in there that staff can actually build the trails and those type of things. We can save a lot of money there if we don't contract that out. The landings, that's going to probably be second because of the time crunch. Avista needs to get that completed so they can do the upgrades of the powerhouse. So it's pushing forward with them. Ball fields fall back a little bit simply because we need to generate money to start it. And I would hope that Little League would kick in and start helping with some fundraising, but I'm not holding my breath on that.
Al?
Here's one other point. We built Black Bay. It's done. You know, we've got somewhat maintenance going on, but just as the gentleman showed us, we're even in a perfect case scenario, we're going to kick in $66,000 a year over and above what we can make on this. So this is kind of this isn't like a normal park where people just go in and enjoy it. We've got an ongoing $400,000 nut to crack every year to keep it going. Otherwise, it just sits out there and I don't know how it's used, but I don't know. I was hoping that along with the design plan was going to become a financial plan that says over the course of the next 15 years or whatever, this is where the money's going to come from each year. We're going to pull money out of here, pull money here, and this is how we're going to pay for it too. All I've seen tonight is the construction plan. So back to your point, Linda, yeah, I was just hoping for a more complete plan tonight rather than just the let's build it plan.
So maybe that's what we should ask them for.
Okay, that's fair.
Well, again, there's been good discussion, and the item before us tonight is the adoption of the plan itself. It's not to finance the construction. And so council, however you want to act is fine, but bear in mind that the master plan has been developed, and I assume we've paid for that. And so do we just not adopt it, or do we adopt it and say, but before anything else is spent, bring it back to us?
Or table this decision until the payment plan is brought forward with the construction plan.
I'd rather make a motion.
Want to make a motion?
Yeah. I'd like to move that we accept the Tullamore Sports Complex Master Plan as presented tonight.
We have a second. Motion dies for lack of a second.
I would move that we direct staff to bring back the master plan to include a plan for financing the project and a timeline.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Wilhelm?
Aye.
Malloy?
Aye.
Thorson?
Aye.
Anthony?
Nay.
Wolf?
Aye.
Borders?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next up tonight, we have under new business, ballot measure to authorize local Kootenai County vehicle registration fees. I believe, Shelley, are you?
Mr. Borders is going to introduce it.
Mayor and fellow councilors, it's my privilege to introduce Mr. Glenn Miles. He's the Executive Director of KMPO, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about the transportation infrastructure in Idaho and some ways to fund it. So I'll leave it there.
Thanks. So it's all about the money. So we're going to talk about, always is. So starting about 18 months ago, we were updating our transportation master plan for Kootenai County. It's a 20-year plan that takes a look at the growth and development that's anticipated to occur in this area, just in Kootenai County, between now and 2040. And we're expecting over 300,000 people to be in Kootenai County by that time, which is kind of a scary thought when you think where it was just 10, 15 years ago. So when we started looking at it, we also started looking at, so what does that mean in terms of population, employment, where are the growth centers? And then it all boils down to what's going to happen with regard to transportation. And so during that 18 months, we did a lot of work with the local jurisdictions, did a lot of work with the community and the technical staff of the jurisdictions and ITD. And we culminated that effort in May with the unanimous adoption of that 20-year Metropolitan Transportation Plan. That plan shows that there's a need for just over $1.6 billion in transportation investments by all the jurisdictions, including ITD in Kootenai County, between now and 2040, and that is a very big number. And so part of that plan is that we're required to put together what is considered to be a financially reasonable, and those are federal highway standards, a financially reasonable plan to try and address some of those needs. So working with the Post Falls Chamber of Commerce Public Policy Committee, the Coeur d'Alene Chamber of Commerce Public Policy Committee, the local jurisdictions, technical staff, our board, we started looking at financing options. And when you take a look at the financing for transportation, the Idaho Business Review just did a report. There's one that's come out showing about the need in the state, and it's a very large number. I think they're short about $243 million a year in the state of Idaho alone. So rather than take the big bite and say, okay, so how do we deal with $1.6 billion worth of projects, we decided to take a more strategic approach and say, what are the most important projects in Kootenai County that affect everybody's lives on a daily basis? And then how do we move those projects to get them done faster and more efficiently, rather than the death by 1,000 pinpricks approach, which is the very incremental look. So we identified 12 projects. Those 12 projects are all regionally significant projects. There's things as widening I-90, constructing the Hutter Corridor, fixing Pleasant View, doing Atlas Road, also taking a look at replacing the bridge on 95 across the Spokane River. Just a myriad of projects at Regional Traffic Management Center, fixing the road up at Athol, which would be Highway 54 from 95 past the two railroad tracks that currently have about 70 trains a day on it. So we don't have commerce and tourists and everyday people getting trapped between the trains and at the trains. And it's really a lot of these issues become a safety and reliability issue, which is what we're facing. When you started looking at money, our transportation improvement program last year for all of Kootenai County, including ITD, was about $500 million. This next year, because we're working now on 41, we're working on 95 at the interchange at 53. They're doing a lot. There's a lot of projects going on. But this next program that we'll be set to adopt in September goes from over $500 million to $250 million. So we see it cut in half because the lack of funds are being available. There's a lot of needs across the state. So we can't rely on a lot of the traditional funding mechanisms that have existed. One of those, when you look at the Idaho revenue account, which is where the funds for vehicle registration fees and gas tax comes from, we get about 2.7% out of $460 million a year. So you're not going to get very far on that $13 million from the Idaho account. So we started looking at what local options were available. And, you know, people immediately go to, well, we could look at property tax, we could look at sales tax. And I can tell you, every discussion I had, and I probably met with over 1,200 people in different groups, if you said the word general property tax, it was just like that's a non-starter from the get-go. You talk about sales tax, it was like 60-40, not so hot. But it became really simple when we started doing our homework and found out that the only local option for transportation that exists in the state of Idaho is a local vehicle registration fee. And so we started looking at that, and the attractiveness of it is, from a public policy standpoint, is that it's decided by the residents of Kootenai County. It's a simple majority vote. You have to name the amount and you have to name the duration of that local option. And working with the public policy committees of the two chambers, they said, and it needs to be a pooled program fund directed at specific projects, and it needs to have those projects specifically identified so we know where the money's, so the public knows where the money would go. So that's how those 12 projects got picked. The challenge is, how do you make that happen? So we looked at, $25, $50, $75 increase in the vehicle registration fee. Everybody said 75 is way out of reach. 25 doesn't do anything. It doesn't get you enough to leverage to go with anything. So it landed on a recommendation for a $50 vehicle registration fee over a 20-year period. And people say, well, why for 20 years? And the answer is that because you can leverage. There are programs such as through Federal Highway Administration, which is a low interest loan at about 2.3% interest, where we can borrow for 20 years to gain that value back, which is about $200 million, and then use those funds to leverage federal competitive grants, which we've been very good at. We've received some $10 and $15 million competitive grants. So you need those local resources in order to go after that. So we believe we can, with participation from ITD and those federal grants, we can leverage that $200 million to about $835 million. And that's what everybody was looking for, is how do you leverage that money to get something done? So I've given presentations to a lot of groups about this idea, where we want to go with this. And we've had a lot of very positive public support for it. And it's for the reasons that the Chambers of Commerce and their public policies came out with. The projects are identified. There's a reasonable approach towards getting those funds over a 5 to 7 year period. People will be using these roads as they're paying for them, and it's just not going down through the gravel, as one person put it, and kind of disappearing into budgets. So that's kind of the Reader's Digest condensed version of what it's all about. And I told Shelley that I'd be willing to come and kind of answer questions you might have.
Glenn, quick question for you, just to confirm. So any funds raised in Kootenai County would stay in Kootenai County?
98.5% of the money that is raised from this local option stays in Kootenai County. The other 1.5% goes to administrative overhead by the Department of Revenue, which is a whole lot better than 2.7% return on your investment.
Yeah.
Mr. Miles, is this list that you gave us, is this in the priority, is it already been prioritized?
Those are non-prioritized. I would say non-prioritized. Everybody has their own priorities. What I would suggest to you is this is going to be a competitive process even within the project list. So those people who have got the incentive and got the desire to make it happen sooner, as far as I'm concerned, it would be on a first come, first served basis. One of the things I want to also mention is within this, we want to stand up a public committee that would be advisory to the KMPO board, that would for transparency purposes. One of the things that, having worked in this business a long, long time, is that there's a tendency on the public sector to tinker with the project lists once they get the money, and having a public non-voted in group as an advisory group. So when some jurisdiction or somebody says, hey, can we use some of this money to do this instead of that, that group is there to say, this is what that money was for, and we expect that money to stay there. Or there's got to be a very compelling interest to get elected officials to change it.
I like the idea. That whole thing, ITD's always had an issue with that too, when they try to prioritize projects around the state, it seems like.
Well, we believe that we've answered that question by being very upfront and saying, these are the 12 projects, this is how much we believe they're going to cost. Based on what people have been telling us, the numbers look real, and like I say, I've been doing this a while, so you can generally tell if something's, a bust or somebody's trying to get in lowball to ask for more money later. But it's a competitive process. If one project says we're ready to go tomorrow, once this passes and we get going, the idea of leveraging that with a federal grant so that we can make them happen sooner is, as far as I'm concerned, all the better.
Gary?
So you've got a 20-year
Right.
plan?
Yes.
Is there any hope that that would go away after 20 years, or?
It would sunset.
Okay.
Because we would put an end date on it, they would require a vote to renew it.
A public vote, correct?
By the same
Public
token,
vote, and it would take a simple majority vote to do that.
by the same token, any chance that it would end sooner, depending upon your success in grant
Right.
funding on any of this?
I would say the vote would say from January 1, 2021 through December 31st of 2041. Is that what the statute says? But the group could don't cancel it or go for here's another 12 projects that we want to if we're going to end early.
One more question. Heard about the $240-some million shortfall for maintaining our roads. What if the state steps up and says, we're gonna have to hit everybody up for $100? Now everybody in Kootenai County is up $150.
What I would say to you is if they hit you up for another $100, you'd be getting $2.70 worth of value out of it. And this way you're getting 98.5% of value out of it.
We might not have a choice.
Yeah, we wouldn't have a choice.
Concern, I think, is what happens if.
Well, I can only tell you what happens if we don't.
Yeah, good point.
I'm just counting the number of my vehicles, the number of vehicles I own.
Any other questions?
I know that
Comments?
feeling.
Linda?
So Glenn, are you looking for the city council's recommendation to move this to a ballot? What are you asking for?
Okay, so I'm actually not asking for anything at this point. This is going to go before the CAMPO board, and the CAMPO board is going to make the request on behalf of the region to have it put on the November ballot. And certainly we would like everyone's support that, yes, that's a good thing to do. We would expect, though, that it will take, the commissioners will have to vote on putting it on the ballot. So.
And I'll clarify, it's listed as an action item on the agenda, but the memo itself says it's not an action item for the council. So I know, a little bit confusing, but it's a non-action item on the agenda.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
That's it. Thanks, Glenn. Next item up is the mask-wearing campaign, not a mandate, the mask-wearing campaign.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. So prior to the mandate from Panhandle Health District being adopted, City of Coeur d'Alene and Post Falls School District, Coeur d'Alene School District, Knutson Chevrolet, I don't remember who all is in here, came together to do a mask-wearing campaign. It was to encourage our citizens to wear masks. And they approached City of Post Falls, City of Hayden, City of Rathdrum, and asked them if they would participate. We have been working with them, but this is the first opportunity we've had to bring it to council to get any formal support in the mask-wearing campaign. I did receive a budget from Kiki Miller, City of Coeur d'Alene council member, on Friday. And right now, the total estimated budget is $61,017. And that includes radio advertising, print advertising, billboard advertising, TV advertising, some signage, and we've received some of that signage already. And then there's creative development, artwork creation that goes back to the designs for those items.
Is that total or our share?
That would be total. So I had conversations with the city administrator from Coeur d'Alene asking how to divide it up. This funding they're looking to receive comes from the CARES Act funds. So Coeur d'Alene has their proportionate share of CARES Act funds. City of Post Falls has their proportionate share. Ours is about 1.9 million. I think theirs is a little over 2 million because they're a little bit larger population.
It has to be used for issues related to
To COVID-19, yes. And expended from, I think, March 31st through December 30th of 2020. I can't remember the start date exactly for the CARES Act funds. And so they would take any donations from those other entities, remove that from the 61,000, and then divide the amount out between City of Coeur d'Alene and City of Post Falls. City of Hayden and City of Rathdrum have declined to participate in the campaign.
And Shelley, you said that there were some expenses in that total of 61,000 that were attributed to businesses in Coeur d'Alene for signage.
I'm not
et cetera.
100% sure on that, so I have to clarify that with Kiki. She had mentioned in her email that there were some signs specific to some of the businesses in Coeur d'Alene that they would remove out of the total so that those would be paid for by the businesses of Coeur d'Alene. Or by the chamber, I'm not sure which. So
This is not coming out of taxpayer.
this is not coming out of the taxpayers. It would come out of those CARES Act funds. And what the request was, or what I was asked to bring forward to City Council tonight, was up to $50,000 of Post Falls CARES Act funds. Currently, that's not the amount that's being expended. She didn't know what the cost was going to be when she made the request for up to $50,000. Again, on Friday, I received this budget from her that, or quote, I should say, from Blue 54, is it 541? Yeah, 541, Blue 541.
My, council, I'm not going to tell you how to act, but my recommendation would be if you approve it, to approve it at an amount lower than the 50,000, if we could do that, that was asked for.
I'm
Our
open-
share.
Yeah, I'm open to.
I could make a motion, Mayor, if everybody's ready.
Can I
No?
just make-
Okay.
You mentioned that this doesn't come out of taxpayer dollars. Yeah, it does. I mean, we either.
Not our budget,
Local.
not our
Not our
property
budget.
tax, right.
Right.
It's coming from the federal government. My point is, we just got done talking about budget. We're not taking an increase. We're
Right.
concerned about keeping that down. This is not part of that budget. This is money that we receive through the state from the CARES Act, and it is not anything that's going to be attributed back to property owners and their need to contribute.
And the CARES Act funds do have some significant restrictions on them. So, for example, talking about that, we can't use them to replace property tax. We can't use them to replace revenues, things like that. We can only use them for expenditures directly related to COVID that are not substantially already within your budget.
Okay.
I have one more question. How long is, I don't know, I might already know the answer to this question, but I don't remember if I do. How long is this campaign going?
I don't think they have it.
6 weeks.
6 weeks?
Yes.
And it started already?
Yes, and I will send this out to Mayor and Council electronically.
Yeah, like that,
and make sure
probably.
Shannon has it for the record.
Probably didn't retain the information that I had, but, and it started a week or two ago?
About a week.
We started getting the signs last
Signs.
week, so she doesn't have the actual start date in here. We just call it a 6-week campaign. But yes, we're about a week into it, if I had to estimate. I saw the billboard actually driving to Coeur d'Alene today for a meeting. So the billboard off of I-90, before you hit exit 7, actually had the billboard that you guys saw with the young lady with a mask on, asking folks to please kindly wear their masks.
Which is better than the first one of the options we saw where they started out with a mother and a father and a child riding their bicycle down the trail wearing masks and a lady on an air mattress wearing a mask. So I thought this was a much better campaign.
It fits really within the guidelines. So if you're out on your air mattress by yourself, the guidelines say that you do not need to wear a mask.
Any comments? If not, Linda, did you want to make a motion?
I would make a motion for the City of Post Falls to participate in the mask-wearing campaign, proportionately spending that amount from the CARES Act.
Second.
Or we're going to have? Well, hang on one sec. So a motion second. Al, do you have a comment?
Were we going to put a ceiling on it? They're asking for a
Well, I think
high
if
of-
we do our proportionate share and the total is 61,000, it's going to be considerably less than 50,000.
Oh, that's our total budget, you think?
That's the estimated total budget at this time.
I'm good with that.
And And if I can comment, if you want to say we'll go 30 or whatever, I'm fine with that as well, too, so.
Yeah, I just need to give her a number, so.
Okay, I would amend the motion to use no more than 30,000 as Post Falls share.
Second. I'll amend my second.
Thank you. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Thorson,
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Wilhelm,
Aye.
Malloy.
Nay.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item up, Park and Recreation Master Plan update.
Mayor, Council, Brian was unable to make it tonight, so I will give you an abbreviated version of his presentation. For the last year, the Park and Rec Commission, staff, and the Master Plan Steering Committee have worked with Green Play, our consultant for the master plan. And a final draft has been created. Art, who is a principal with Green Play, will be here at your next council meeting on the 18th to do a presentation to the city council. We just wanted to let you know that on the city's website, under Parks and Recreation, there is a link to that master plan, and we encourage you to review it. It will probably make it a little more relevant with what he's presenting. So.
And that's come forward in 2 weeks, then?
That review will come forward in 2 weeks, yes.
Any questions, Dave? Thanks, sir. Next item on the agenda is citizens' issue, and this section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the council on a city-related issue that is not on the agenda. Mr. Flowers.
Bob Flowers. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. First, I'd like to start off with saying thank you to the mayor for meeting with me this afternoon. I appreciated your time. This kind of fits in with tonight's discussions that everybody's been having. At your last council meeting, we found out that a project supposedly had run almost $800,000 over budget. Well, after crunching the numbers, talking to the mayor, checking the votes on things, I find out that everything was approved by the council except for approximately $116,000 or $116,003.73.
And that was in staff time, or?
That is items without council approval. Okay, and I went back through these numbers and that, and I have records of the council's voting on certain dates, and for some reason I see an item on here for electrical for that particular project. For electrical for $24,000, it ran $30,900. But on these same council dates, I find no vote for it. On April 16th, I see votes here for the air conditioning and the heating. I see land services, excavation, and curbs and sidewalks, but nothing for the electrical that supposedly was approved on that particular night. So there's another 30 grand that I still can't account for.
What was the date on that, Bob?
4/16.
Thank you.
I remember when this project originally got proposed to the council. Now, I'm not going to try to beat up anybody, and I've gotten insurances today from the mayor that this type of project won't happen again. at least not with without the council's blessing. But boy, this new sports complex sounds like just the same type of project. It's going to stretch out forever and ever, and nobody has a final number. The reason that this wasn't all added up together from the original 501 was because it was stretched out over such a long period of time. They just kept coming back and adding more and more and more to it. And suddenly, a $500,000 project was a $1.2 million project. And they were spending money from these impact fees again. I don't know, I don't quite understand the impact fees altogether myself, but I think things need to be tightened up a lot when it comes to spending that money. And we need some way of tying together these projects, because the council did meet on multiple days, multiple meetings, and approved it. I got everybody's votes right here in front of me. So I'm just asking you to please be a little more conservative with our money, because from a $500,000 to 1.2 or 1.3, whatever it finally ends up to being, that's a big distance, and that's a lot of taxpayers' dollars. And I'd like to make sure that never happens again. That's all I have tonight.
Thanks, Bob.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to clarify that the document that Mr. Flowers has is a document that was prepared by staff showing the votes and the breakdown of the project. So Robbie Quinn and Rhiannon O'Neill put that document together.
So there's.
And Shannon Howard also assisted.
So we may want to look at that one electrical and see.
So there could be an error in the dates that we listed for that project approval, so we can go back and review that.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's all public record.
Yes, it is. But this particular document was put together by Shannon.
I shared it with Mr.
Yeah.
Flowers during our conversation today.
Yeah.
Mr. Rubin.
Barry Rubin, Post Falls. Good evening. It's been a while since I've spoken, so bear with me as I muddle through my rambling. What I'm going to discuss is not a direct city issue, but it's tangential to the city because it's intruding on various deliberations that the city is making. And it's got to do with numbers. And it's got to do with numbers starting at the level of the CDC to the Panhandle Health. I'm not going to talk about masks, right, wrong, or anything. Just want to throw out some numbers to try and give some perspective and maybe stimulate some independent research and analysis on the part of the decision makers. The numbers I'm going to give are taken directly from the various agency websites. This first one from CDC is for the 2018-2019 flu season. Again, direct from CDC. And by the way, their numbers go back to 2010, if anybody has lots of time on their hands and wants to do some tracking. For that flu season, there were 35.5 million cases of certifiable flu reported to CDC. 35.5 million. Of that, 490,600 cases were hospitalized. Now think about these numbers as we're talking about our situation today, and bear in mind vaccines were available for the various flus we're talking about. 34,200 deaths were reported. I'll drop down to the next level, and this is going to come directly from the Idaho Department of Health. If I can read my own handwriting, and it's getting harder and harder every year. This is for 2018-2019 Idaho Department of Health. 58 deaths in the state of Idaho. Of those 58 deaths, 8 were from Panhandle Health District number 1, this health district. As an aside to that, I would ask, where are the numbers for the usual influenza seasons being recorded in Panhandle Health or any place else for that matter? I've not seen the standard numbers being reported. Everything is being reported as COVID-19. Food for thought. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying there's some nefarious conspiracy lurking in the weeds. I'm just saying I think decision makers need to think about these things. From Panhandle Health District website before I came this evening, 14 deaths out of 1,911 lab-confirmed cases. Not suppositions, not maybe, not perhaps, lab-confirmed. And if my math is correct, that works out to a death rate of 0.73%. Just a number to cogitate on. Of the total population that Panhandle Health administers, the 5 counties of approximately 245,406, that death rate works out to 0.78%. I would ask the council and all decision makers, wherever they may be, to think about these numbers, and when the powers that be at higher level throw numbers out or say this or say that, think about, well, wait a minute, does this make sense? Does this warrant the response they are asking us to make? I'm not making a judgment, good, bad, or indifferent. One more item. One of the categories that Panhandle Health uses to classify a case or a death for COVID-19 is called vital records criteria. And that is, it meets vital records criteria with no confirmatory laboratory testing performed for COVID-19. They are being put in as a case or a COVID-19 death. And I quote from the definition of that, quote, a death certificate that lists COVID-19 disease or SARS-CoV-2 as a cause of death or a significant condition contributing to death, unquote. Not necessarily cause. And I'm out of time, and I'll sit down, and thank you for listening.
I did let you finish your quote, though.
And yeah, unquote. And I hope that is just food for thought to cogitate and think somewhat.
Thanks, Brad. Seeing no one else, next item on the agenda is the mayor council comments, and I don't believe I have any tonight. Council? No. Seeing none, we do not need an executive session.
We do not, sir.
So the next motion is?
Adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.